Okay, assignment 3. This one is, quote, the infamous Ford problem. And I say infamous because the poor students that got this the very first time, this was one question on a 40-question exam for the midterm. Yes, they all freaked out and nobody passed the midterm. It got rewritten. So, mostly because they didn't follow directions. It was actually only worth 10 points of the entire exam, and they were supposed to do everything first. And long story short. So this is also the one, as I've mentioned a couple times, that people tend to cheat on because it is a little more difficult. It takes them to actually apply everything that they've learned so far, not just go do this kind of thing, right? But I'm going to walk you through a big chunk of it here today. The goal is to get you guys to think in this way, like, how would I do this? Because this is exactly what you guys will need to do for your midterm projects. All right. So let's go ahead and fire up idle just to get us going here. Start up a new file. Get rid of this guy. There we go. Get him split to the side, and we'll get this one up here. Okay. So this whole problem is based on Ford looking at their car lineup. Their database manager is gone, and so they've tasked you with a single Python file to help, or to create one that will help them gather some information. And this is all the information they got out of a table. Okay. So we have all of the names up here at the top, aka what we will end up using for keys, or whatever it is. And then you have the cars over here on the left, right? And then we have all this information that goes all the way down. Okay, so we're going to copy and paste this at the top, which I strongly encourage you to do on all these homework assignments, making sure you've got everything that was needed. Let's do that. Scroll this over here so we can get this right. There we go. Some comments in there. Okay. So first one's usually pretty easy, right? Get your single point, put your name on the paper. So we just come back over here. Let's get that. Copy this right out of the homework and paste that in at the top. Hopefully everybody's got that figured out by now. I haven't had to take off on that too much, but this will be assignment 3. The only other thing I've seen on homework assignments, making sure you guys name your homework assignments files correctly. So it should be your name and then assignment 3 or homework 3. Either one of those are fine. Don't just call it assignment3.py. I have, like I've mentioned many times, almost 80, 90 students now taking this at the same time. Assignment 3 does not work. Okay. So we got this at the top. We now have our points for our initial comments. And let's start looking at the different requests. So create a dictionary for each vehicle that contains the fields/keys and the values that are listed above. All right, so let's go look back at the actual problem, which is here, manipulate strings. So we have this table. We have all of these are our fields. So these up here at the top will end up being our keys, okay? These down here are the names of the cars, and these are all the values as it goes through. So to get started, we want to create a dictionary for each vehicle that contains those keys. All right, so we're going to start by creating a dictionary for each one of these. Car 1 equals, we set up a dictionary. This first one is going to be the name, and we need to specifically use these names. You're just copying and pasting here, okay? Don't try to short it. Don't try to do any of that. Just copy and paste. So this is name. Start this here, name. And the value for this first one is ka. Okay. So ka. And then our next key is year introduced. Year introduced. And the value for that one is 1996. Okay. Put everything over here in strings. It'll make your life a lot easier. Okay. So this first car coming across here, its name is Ka. The year introduced is 1996. Then we'll do production is this, and you're just going to keep going down. That make sense? Ha, that's the name of this car here. This first one is Ka, K-A. The dictionary? Yeah. The variable name I gave this first car is just car 1. And you'll do car 2, car 3, car 4, etc. Yep. Okay. So we have that one. Then the next one is year introduced. And it is that, or I'm sorry, we did year introduced. It's production of the current model. Again, don't shorthand it, just put it in there. Production of the current model. And the value for that one on this first one is 2014. Again, put that in as a string. Then we have generation. And we have that set to 3rd generation. And then vehicle information. And this is developed by Ford Brazil as a super mini car. Okay. Again, I'm not doing anything fancy here. I'm just taking exactly what's in that chart, and I'm going to make this to where it's easier to read this dictionary here. So give me just a second here. Take our year introduced, production, generation, and the vehicle information. Okay. Give you a second to look at those. Now, one hint in these, instead of I use single quotes for all these, I would use double quotes, because there will be a section where there's some concatenation going on. And so it's easier just to start off the bat with double quotes for each one of these. So we'll just fix that real quick. You could just fix the one that was already there or that has the issue, but using what you learned this week, we'll take advantage of our double quotes. Okay, so you should end up with something like that looks on the screen. I'll let you get the first one in there. Now, work smarter, not harder. Okay, we have to do another car. Copy and paste all of this. Oops. Control C, Control V. We now call this car 2, right? And then we just copy the data accordingly. So now this one is Fiesta. We don't have to retype everything. We just change the name. 1976. 2017. That one is the 7th generation. And then the text for that is right off the bat. This is the one that would have gave you a problem. Ford's long running subcompact based on global car platform. Okay. So adding the rest of these is really easy. Once you get the structure all set up for the first one, from there, you're just copying and pasting, adding the different information in there. The key should always be the same, right? Every one of these car has a name, a year introduced, a production line, generation, and vehicle information. So when you copy and paste, all you got to do is change the values on each one of those. So at least get the first 2 entered in, and then you guys will do the rest. Okay. Yeah, it won't let you necessarily copy and paste. You may have to actually just type it. It will let you copy and paste it if you mouse right over the text and then drag and copy. You might be able to get it. But if it's what do you call it? If you got the mouse cursor that looks like a cursor, it won't do it. Sometimes to make this easier, if you zoom in a little bit, then come to it, then it's easier to get the text bar. Yeah, I wish there was a better way to fix that. Unfortunately, the way Blackboard does that doesn't make that easy to copy and paste.
So I guess we just copy and paste it from the code though.
Yeah, just copy and paste from your code is all you're looking to do. So I said, get that first one set up. Now, if I wanted to do car 3, I copy and paste this, say car 3, and then all I'm changing is the name, this value here, this year, the generation, and this text. So it makes it really easy to copy and paste from there on out. It's all about getting that first one set up with the right structure. Now, this will apply to your guys' midterm projects because you'll be doing something else, right? So if you're building out student information, well, think of all the student information you want to get about that student: hair color, eye color, grades, age, whatever, right? You build your dictionary, and then for every student, they're all going to have that same format. If you were doing something with a student, right? Let's see, somebody got a question here. Copy and paste into a Word document, then go individually. That works too. Yep. However you can get that data to transfer over is great. The key there is I do want you to copy and paste that and not change the title. So some in years past, they'll change this production of current model. Instead of saying all of that, they'll just say production. Well, when I go to run my test against it, it can't find production of current model, and therefore it crashes, right? So I'm telling you to specifically use all the information you're seeing here. Yeah.
So to make sure that the apostrophe doesn't get read.
Yeah, so that's where I was saying, make sure you always use double quotes. And that way, when you do forward with a single quote, that will not become a problem. Does that make sense? That was part of what we learned this week, was to avoid that. Now, you could put in the slash in there, right? That would be the escape character. You could do some other stuff. It's much easier if you just take advantage of your double quotes. What do you mean?
Mine was, even though I had double quotes, it was still regular.
This stuff over here? Yes. Yep. Because there's more apostrophes over here than there was doubles, it's easier to use doubles. That's a great comment. So when you do them on Deo, make sure that you use single quotes for just this one value so that you can get your double quotes in there. All right, again, don't worry about all the rest of the cars right now. Just get at least the first 2 in there so we can start writing this other code. All right. Okay. So the whole purpose behind this project is you will interpret some table data. We're going to put it in something Python can manage. And in this case, a dictionary lends itself really, really well, right? We got fields, AKA keys, and we got our values that are inside those fields. Okay, let's write a function that will take a list of these dictionaries and return a new dictionary with, okay, I got this way too big for you guys here. I'm gonna have to shrink my, no, come on. I zoomed this in here for in the classroom. I may have to shrink it down to us a little bit. All right, hopefully you guys can still see that a little bit. If not, you'll see it in the video. Okay, what I want you to do is write a function that will take a list of these dictionaries and return a new dictionary. Notice it says return a new dictionary with the name as the key and the dictionary as the value. Okay, we're going to break that down into little chunks. So one thing you'll want to notice is if you come back out here on Blackboard, notice that I bold and underline these things. I'm specifically telling you what to do on that one, right? So when we come back to this one and we want to figure out how to do this, let's break it down into chunks. First part is write a function that will take a list of these dictionaries and do something. So let's just stop there we need to have a list of all these cars, right? Because we have to have a list to pass into our function. So we're going to have a list called cars, and that's going to have car 1 in it, car 2, and then etc. Right? So if I build out the rest of these up here, I would have car 2, car 3, car 4, car 5. I would add them to my list of cars. Everybody see how that works? So now I have a list of cars up above. Now, if you pass this into ChatGPT, it's going to give you a whole different answer. So don't do it. Follow the video. Okay? If you copy and paste this in and then feed it the other data, ChatGPT gives you some complicated advanced Python thing. Don't do that. It's not overly complicated. You want to take a list of these dictionaries. All right. Each one of these cars is a dictionary. We're going to put that car variable into a list. It's as simple as this. So if I have car 3 and I have the dictionary information, then I need to add it to my list. Car 3. Make sense? All right. Now we need to write a function. Does everybody remember how to write a function? What do we start with?
Yeah.
Def, right? So we have def, and then we need to give it whatever function name that we want to call this. Okay. So we're going to call this new card dictionary. Okay. Then, if you remember, we have these 2 parentheses, and these 2 parentheses indicate something that we're passing into our function. Well, we know we have to pass it in a list. So let's call it car list, for lack of a better term. Okay. We do our colon. Now, inside of our function, from now on, the list of those cars is going to be called car list. So we can test that just by doing a simple loop, right? Print it out, see what we got. So if we print car list, just for the sake of being right now. Now, if we run this, what's going to happen? Nothing, right? Because we haven't called our function. So we need to go ahead and call our function, new car dictionary. And we're going to pass in our car list. What's the name of our car list? Cars. Okay. So when we go to call our function, we have to do it in this format here. All right. So we need to test what we have so far. Just call this homework 3 example.
Why would you just leave that cars that control states?
Up here.
Yeah.
The problem is that yes, you can name it cars, but you're dealing with something that in the global scape is called cars and something locally called cars. So it's usually best to give those 2 different names. Does that make sense? The moment I take cars, I pass that from my global scope into this function. It is now a local scope in here, meaning I have car list from here on out. You could call it cars, it will still work. But if you are anticipating on changing the cars, then you would have to call it as a global list. It keeps you from getting confused later on. You think you're using global and you're not, you're using local. It's a great question. Okay, we run it. We look over here and we at least have a list of all those different dictionaries that we created earlier. Now I only have 2 in here, but you should have like 9, something like that, right? However many cars are listed there. Okay. Yeah, or
Getting a syntax error that says undetermined string literal. Oh wait, never mind. I know what it's called.
okay, so we know that our list is working correctly. It's getting passed into our function. Our function currently just says print that list. Okay, so we're going to take out that print line because that's not really what we wanted to do. We just want to make sure our function was working so far. And it says we want to return a new dictionary where the name of this car becomes the key and the value becomes the entire dictionary. All right. So how would we go about getting the key of the first car in our list? Well, first of all, we're returning a new dictionary, right? So we should create a new empty dictionary. Okay, so we'll just call it new dict equals, and then we'll just create an empty dictionary. Just get us started here. Okay, Now we need to loop through our cars and add them to that dictionary. So we would just say for car in car list, right? Real simple for loop. That's going to let us go through every single car in our car list. That make sense? Everybody got that part? You're fine. We have plenty of time. And same way, guys online, if you're not getting all of this, please stop me. I've already had lots of emails saying that they just don't quite know how to apply it. Like they understand some of the concepts, they don't know how to apply it. That's perfectly fine. This is why we want to go through. So if you get questions, by all means, please stop me. You're not the only one. I've gotten lots of emails about that. So, okay. So for each car in this car list, we now want to add that to this new blank dictionary that we created. Okay. And we want to say the key is going to be the name of the car. Well, how do we get the name of the car? Notice that we're assigning the name car to this dictionary. So if I wanted to get car back, how would I get that back out of here? Right. It wouldn't be car one. It would just be car, right? You're on the right track. No, I don't want you to think you're wrong. You're on the right track. It's car. And then what do we get back for that index? Name. So we say name. And so when this looks up that car name, this value is what? For that first one, car, right? So we want to set that as the key for our new dictionary. So we say new dict. We put that in square brackets around that. Everybody see what that's doing? So it's going to run this part first, which is going to return the value ka the first time through. It's going to set a key in the new dictionary of that. And our value is the entire dictionary up above, which is called car, right? It's that simple. We're taking the name of whatever this was. We're creating a new dictionary in which the key is the name of this car. The value is the entire car dictionary. Now we're going to go ahead and let that loop through for each one of our cars. And then for now, we're just going to go ahead and print that new dictionary to make sure we got what we wanted. Okay. Now, does anybody remember the best way to print dictionaries? There's a module we can use that helps that be a little easier. Somebody probably said it here. Pretty print, right? So let's import pretty print. No, you'll want to remove this by the time this homework assignment's done. This is just for us to troubleshoot and make sure we're getting the output we anticipated. So we will do pretty print dot pretty print, and we want to pass in new dict. And that's just going to double check and make sure our new dictionary looks like we would expect it to. All right. We call this same one here. That all looks good. And let's go ahead and run it. Okay. So look at this output. We have this new dictionary, which is what this is indicating here, right? Notice the name of that car is the key, and the value is that entire dictionary, including the one that says name, right? We didn't remove anything from the dictionary. We just dumped the whole thing in. All right. Does everybody understand what we got out of this first function? To the code? Yeah. It's a real simple function that's taking in a list of all these cars. We're going to create a new dictionary as a whole thing in which the name of these cars are over here and the values are the entire dictionary. Now, why would we want to do something like that? What's wrong with just our list of cars? It's not so much a print thing. If we took each one of these car dictionaries and stuck them in this list, and say I wanted to get Ka back, how would I get Ka back? Or Fiesta, let's use, that way I don't sound like I'm saying car in a really weird way. So I want to get the Fiesta dictionary back. How do I do that? How do I look up the Fiesta dictionary in my list? Can't, right? Because we're not using any key name. We would have to know what index that one was, right? So by converting this whole thing to a dictionary, now we can look up in this dictionary, hey, which one of those is Fiesta? Boom. We get Fiesta, we get all the information about a Fiesta. That's the reason putting this all in an overall dictionary makes sense, and that we're keying it by the name of the car. We could key this with anything, right? We could key it by the year introduced. We could key it by the production year, whatever we want. But it makes the most sense as we refer to cars by their name, not by the year they were produced. That's the 1977. 1977, what?
So how does it, it calls Fiestas, like Fiestas first on the side?
Yeah, so notice that this list order doesn't really still matter, right? We started with Ka and we have Fiesta, but remember a dictionary or has no order. So the reason that Fiesta is first, it's because it has no order when it's in a dictionary. Is that what your question is?
You're able to have a Fiesta and then it says the information beside it and the car and the information about it beside it.
Yep.
Is that's just random, or is that part of that dictionary?
That's the dictionary that we made here. So we have this new dictionary that's empty, right? We are going to say the key of that new dictionary, which is the name of this car, Fiesta. Well, how did we get the word Fiesta? Well, we had to look into the car dictionary, right, up here, and we had to use the key name in order to get that variable back. That's what this does here. So what I have highlighted returns back as Fiesta, for example. When it comes back as Fiesta, then we say it's equal to this entire car dictionary. Then we just do that for everything in the list. So as I went through and did car 3, car 4, car 5, it would automatically add them all to the overall dictionary. Okay. So that is outputting the way we want it. Now, what's the key thing that I bold and underlined here for that first function? This one right here. Return, right? We're not supposed to print the information. We're supposed to just return it. All right. So we need to remove our pretty print line. We know everything's working the way we want. We need to just return new dict. And that will return the dictionary back to the user. So now if I write this function or run this program, what happens? Nothing, right? And the reason is there's never a print function called. It's executing all the code. It's just there's nothing never told it to print. Okay. We can also remove this call down here as we don't need this call anymore. That was just for us testing. Does everybody get when I say write a function that returns? This is only what you should have. If I run the program, absolutely nothing should happen at this point. We're not calling a print. We're not even calling our function at this point. We did it to test, but once that test is done, we got to remove those testing. All sound good? How about online? Are you guys doing okay? Okay.
So we can get rid of the import PP print.
For now, we'll leave the import pre-P print because you're going to be testing some other stuff along the way.
PP print do again.
Pretty print is what allowed you to see it in this nice clean format instead of just one big garbage line all the way across. Yep.
And it's fine, but I like that.
Yeah, so the reason this is like this is because the word Fiesta and the length, but notice how it's all aligned nice and pretty here. So it'll all align the values nice and pretty, and it's actually aligning all the keys. The only reason it's spaced off is because the length of these. Versus something like this, which is really hard to read, right?
Yeah.
Pretty print puts it where we can actually see it. Okay, let's get on to the second part. I'm going to some reason that is all garbled in the wrong way here, so let me move that on down. Okay. So here we want to write a function that will go through that newly created dictionary that we got out of this first one, right? And we're going to return a list of all the car names and then sort that alphabetically. All right. So let's break it down into little chunks. What's the first part? Write a function. There you go. Don't even go any further than that, right? That means we need to use def. We need to call this something else. Doesn't matter what we call it. So let's call it car sort, right? The end result is we're sorting this alphabetically. We're just going to call this function car sort. You can literally name it whatever you want. Doesn't matter. Okay. So now we need to pass in the output from the first function. So again, doesn't matter what we call it here. We're going to call it car dict at this point because it's the car dictionary. All right. I'm just randomly picking the name. Okay, so we have this output from this first one, and we will once we pass it in, but right now we don't. Okay, so if I wanted to get out of that car dictionary, which we have right here, what's it say? We want to go through this dictionary, grab all the car names, and then sort it. Well, how could I go about grabbing the car names out of this dictionary? There you go. So the keys of each one of these are the names of the cars, right? We already have those in a nice, easy place for us to grab. These are all the keys. So we just need to grab all the keys out of that dictionary. So we just say for car or for name in car dict dot keys, right? That's going to loop us through all the keys in that dictionary. And this wants us to return a what? Return a list. So we need to start out with an empty list. We're going to call it cars sorted. Like that. Equals just an empty list, right? Now we're going to grab each one of those car names and we need to add it to that list. How do we do that? How do you add something to a list? Append, right? So cars sorted dot append, and we're going to append the name of that car because that is what key is in that particular dictionary. All right. Now let's go ahead and just print cars sorted to make sure we got what we wanted. And to make all this work, we now have to call this car sort function, right? Car sort. What are we passing to car sort? The new dict, which is the result of the function of calling new car dictionary, right? So now we need to call new car dictionary. And what are we passing into new car dictionary? All of our cars, right? So cars. So you're going to have something down here that is a function that's calling another function inside of it, right? So break it down. This we ran earlier. This returns the new dictionary out of this function. Then we're taking this function and passing in the result of this one into this one and seeing what list we get out of it. Everybody got that? All right, so let's run this. And now we have a list that has all the names of our cars. Everybody see how we got it? Yeah.
So on the last piece of code, car sort, why do we use two sets of parentheses instead of square brackets?
Here?
Yeah.
Because we're calling a function inside of a function, right? This is calling a function here, and then we're passing that inside this car sort. Another way of doing this, to make this a little easier to read, you could do something like my new dictionary equals, and then you're calling that function to get the result, and then you would pass my new dictionary into this other function, right? Does that make a little more sense that way? You're getting the result of this one, setting it as a variable name, then you're passing that into another one. You can shorthand that and just do it as one long string. It's a little easier that way. So you would have car, sort, new, car, dictionary, cars that we're passing into. Okay. So this worked. We ran it. We got back a list of all of our cars. Right. Now you could do this for loop where we go through every single one of these keys and we append it into a new list. Is there a shorter way of doing that? Well, we know cardict.keys is returning us a list like object, right? Right? Cardict.keys is, it looks like a list, but it's not truly a list, right? We can using the list function, right? So one way of doing this is like way A, okay? Another way of doing this would have been cars sorted equals list of cardict.keys. That would have got us back the same list. Instead of us creating an empty list and then appending each one of these in, this one-liner would do the same thing as these 3 lines of code. Okay, doesn't matter which one you end up doing. But just so you guys know, based on the other stuff you learned, you could do this in a one-liner like this. Now, the reason we have to do it that way and pass it into a list is so we get a true list. Because now when we want to sort our list, so we want to sort cars sorted, how do we do that? Remember, this is supposed to come back in alphabetical order. And it's currently not. So how do we get it in alphabetical order? Somebody got to hear. Yes, you could do it that way, Jared. Yep. And what that's doing is that's taking cardict.keys, converting that into the list function, which will then give us the end result. Exact same as what these 3 lines of code are doing. It just condensed it down. Okay. So to sort a list, how do we do that? Does anybody remember? Don't overthink it. We want to sort. There you go. We use the sort method, right? So cars sorted dot sort. That will sort the list for us. Then we can go ahead and print it to make sure it's in the proper order. And now we do. We have Fiesta and then Caught at this point. Everybody see what we did? You have to sort it in one line. And then we are supposed to what? What's this word here? Return, right? We're not supposed to print it. We're supposed to return it. So we would say return cars sorted. Everybody see how we got there? Might be easier if we use things like comments, right? So create an empty list, loop through cardict, and add the names to the list above. Comment, sort the car names alphabetically. Comment, return the list. Okay. You don't have to do these comments, but it makes it a whole lot easier to understand what you did. And if you get in this habit, it'll make your midterm project a whole lot easier. You can do the same thing for this one up here so you remember why you're doing what you're doing. So for example, what would this one up here be? What would be a good comment above this dictionary? Create an empty dictionary. Now we're going to loop through the list of cars and get the name and set as the key in the new dictionary. And then here would be something like return the dictionary. Okay. All right, your two functions down. Everybody feeling somewhat comfortable on how to write functions now? You just start out with your def, you get your piece done. Each one of these, attack them in chunks, right? If you read this long thing, it looks really, really complicated. But if we broke it down, where first write a function. Okay, let's do that. Then it's going to go through the newly created dictionary. All right, we need a new list in this case. And we're going to return a list of all those card names. All right, we do that. Just always break down that into little chunks. All right, next 5 points is to create our next function. And that function is going to go through the newly created dictionary, aka what came out of this one up here. All right, and return a new dictionary of all the car names and the years introduced. So the car names will be the keys, the years introduced will be the values. All right, well, that's not too bad. We kind of know how to get through this at this point, right? So how would we start that one? Yeah, Warren.
That function.
Yep. So we do a def to create a new function. Let's call this one car year, right? We're returning the car names and then the years introduced. Let's call it car year. So car year, what are we passing in? We're passing in car dict. Yep. We can reuse because it's inside of a local. And then how would we start tackling this one? Well, there's some keys to this. What do I say here? Write a function that will what? Go through a new dictionary. Well, how do we go through a dictionary? What does that equate to in Python? If I want to go through a list and print out everything in that list, what do I do? For loop, right? So use your for loops to go through. Yep, exactly, Aaron. So we want to go through our newly created dictionary. All right, and we're going to return a new dictionary of whatever. So we need to start with creating a new dictionary, right? So new dict equals new dictionary. We're going to use a for loop to go through this dictionary. And in this case, we want to get the key and the value back out of it. So how do you get keys and values out of a dictionary? Yeah.
Well, put A, since we already have something. Does that mean that?
Doesn't matter because this new dict and this new dict will never collide because this one is inside of a function. Therefore, it's only local to this function and this function only. When we call this one down here, it has no effect on this code up here.
And would it be car year dot keys dot values?
Yeah, it's a good idea. So you had dot keys and dot values. There's the third one, which Jared pointed out, car dict items. It's actually plural, Jared, but you're on the right track. So we could use for K comma V in car dict, which is, in this case, I had mine lowercase, dot items. Remember, dot items is going to give you back a tuple, where the first one is the key and the second thing in it is the value, right? We're assigning that the word K and V. Well, what are some better names that we could use besides K comma V? We could use K and V, but what's some better ones? Well, if you remember, right, so what's our keys in car dict? Does anybody remember what our keys are? The names, yep, so names. And the values, which Aaron mentioned was year there, but our values are actually what?
Year.
It's not really the year, it's that's our end result. We want it to be the year introduced. But right now, what is our value? It's the whole dictionary, right? Remember, we go back and go look at our output. The value is this whole dictionary for that car. So we can call that car. That makes sense? Why we're calling that one car? Because it's not just the year introduced. The value out of that is the entire car dictionary. Okay. Now, of this new dictionary that we have, new dict, we want to set a key of the name of the car. So where do we get the name of the car? We can pull it right out of our thing that we just built, right? Just name. So new dict name equals. Now the value is supposed to be what? This is what you guys were saying before. The value is supposed to be the car year, right? And it's the year it was introduced. So out of this dictionary, how would I get back the year introduced? Right. So in this case, what do I need to call here? What's the variable name for the entire dictionary? We assigned it up above here.
Car one.
Not car one, but
Cars.
not even cars. Car, right? Right here. We assigned it the variable name car. That's what this comma did. Does that make sense? This was multiple assignment trick where we name the keys name and the values as car. We want to use the value of car. Now, of that dictionary, which one do we want to pull out? Year introduced. And this is where it's extremely important that you guys copy and paste this stuff up above, because if you hand type it and you did a lowercase I on any one of these, it wouldn't find it, right? Does that make sense? Because it's looking specifically for year introduced. So it's better to make the first one right and then copy and paste it on down. Okay, so we now have a new dict. Its key is going to be the name of the car, and the value was the year it was introduced. So if we want to print the output of our new dict, just to make sure we got it correctly. And then how do I call that function? So I want to call this function first, which is car year. So I say car year. What am I passing into car year? Right, which is the output from this function, right? So I need to say new car dictionary. Oops, like this, right? And into that, I'm passing in what? Cars. Just like we did up on this other one when we tested it, which, by the way, we need to clear that one out. Okay. We cleared out that line up here that when we tested that, we moved that to a return. We no longer need this part. You should just end up with three functions. Here's a function, here's a function, here's a function. We're only writing this to test and print. All right, instead of print, we'll probably use what? And eventually we'll use return, but when we want to see the output of a dictionary, pretty print, right? So let's use pretty print dot pp print. There we go. Not two R's, just two P's. And now we can see, in this case, it didn't matter because we only have two cars. If we had the right amount of cars, it would be fine. So we have the names as the keys, Fiesta and Ka. We have the values of 1976 and 1996. Everybody see how we ended up with that result? Now, what were we supposed to do on this? You just said it. Return it, right? So we take this here and we just say return new dict. That will return that dictionary back to the user. All right. You are 16 points of this homework assignment done already. Roughly, right? I mean, you still have to add the cars at the top, but. All right, so what do you think? Should we get you the next 5 points? There's only 10 points left in the assignment. The answer is yes. Okay. How did I know it would be yes?
25 points.
At this point, I think I'm just doing the assignment. No, that's fine. I usually take you through this next part and then you guys got to figure out this last one, which is a little tough. Okay. Now, let's look at this one. What does it say? Use a print statement to show the results from function from step 3, which means take the results of this guy right here. All right. And print that each on their own line. Well, what does this return us? Does anybody remember what this function returns us? Cars sorted, which is a alphabetical list of all the cars, right? It's an alphabetical list. All right. Well, this wants us to go through that and print each car on its own line. How do we go through a list? You guys have said it a couple times today. For loops, right? It's all about for loops to get through data. All right. So first, in order to print this out, we need to go through the results of that list. So that would be like for what? What are the values inside that list? Cars, but it's really just their what's sorted alphabetically. The names, right? So we could say for name in, and now we need to call that function in order to get those results. So how do we call this function? Car sort. And then what are we passing into car sort? Car dict that came out of this first function, right? So then we're going to call that first function. See where my mouse cursor is here. Which is called new car dictionary, right? Yep, new car dictionary. And what do we have to pass into that function? It tells you right here, because we told it, car list, right? Which is, for us, what's the name of that car list? Cars. All right, see how we close that? Then it told us to close it one more time. Now, what do we do? Don't overthink it. There you go. Print. And what are we printing? Name. There you go. You guys are picking up. If you think it's hard, you're probably just overthinking stuff, right? Let's see. So Aaron, great example, right? Aaron says we could print this name is and then plus car name. The problem is I didn't tell you to put the text of this car name, right? It just wants you to print each one of those results on its own line. So this is one of those where you don't want to overdo what the assignment said. Does that make sense? This particular manager, if you go back to their original problem, their database manager is gone and they just want this specific information. They don't want a bunch of extra text and data. So you're not wrong there, Aaron. Don't let me. I make an example of that because I have students do that. They add too much to that. Well, then it ruins what comes out because I take your result. Great emoji, Aaron. When I take your guys' results out and I use a comparison tool to compare to what should be the output, if you make it super fancy, it doesn't match. Notice how I also don't say, here is the results of this, right? I don't tell you to do that, so don't put that. It doesn't want you to do that. All right. That's the unwritten part of this homework assignment is the idea that you don't want to do too much. Don't do more than what it wants you to do. Just do what it says. You guys are already going to struggle enough figuring out how this actually works, right? All right. So that one's pretty easy. You guys got that one. Let's go ahead and run it. Make sure we got our results. And what do you know? Each one of those cars is on its own line. And what was that function actually doing? They're all in alphabetical order. Probably missing a colon. See how many times I've done this? I could tell from there what that meant. Okay. So we have these first 5 points. This last 5 points is the one I want you guys to do on your own. With that being said, how would you guys think to attack that one? Well, let's look at what it says, right? So use a print statement to show the results of function step 4. So it wants the results of car year. Okay. And we want to display those results in the format of year, space, colon, space, name. And we want to make sure those years are sorted. Well, just break down the first part. How would we do the first part? It's going to be very similar to the one above it, right? We're going to do some kind of for loop because we're going to go through it. So for what? Name. Yep. Aaron's got this one. Name year in car year, because we're going to go through that particular dictionary or this result, right? And to that one, we had to pass in the new car dictionary. And into that, we had to pass in our cars, right? Okay. Now, is that going to work? Okay, capital D in dictionary. What else are we missing on this line here? You guys were using this for a reason, and that is correct. Name, comma, year. But what do we have to use over here in order to be able to get the name is the first part and the year is the second part? The items, right? If we didn't do that and we tried to print this, it would come back and say, I don't have anything, right? We have to tell it that we want the dot items back. Okay. So given what you have learned this week with F strings, how could we go ahead and do this part? We want to print this in a very specific format here. If you weren't using F strings, how would you do it? All starts off with a print. And then what would we have? Year. Plus space, colon, space, that, and then what? Plus name. Okay, that all look right? Yeah. So let's run that. Let's see if it matches the format we wanted. And sure enough, we got the year over here on the left, and we got our name on the right, and we have the space, colon, space format that it asked for. Okay. Now, using F strings, how could you do this same thing? Here we used what? Remember what that plus sign means? What did we do? String concatenation. We concatenated the year. We concatenated that with this string, and we concatenated that with the name. So the easier way would be to use like an F string, in which case you could just say the year. And we don't have to have all this plus mumbo jumbo. We just have a space, colon space, and you put the name of the variable that you want inside those brackets. That's all you got to do. So if you used an F string, this is how you would do it. Does everybody see the difference? The difference is I don't have to have plus equals and get my spacing and all that concatenation right. I just write the line the way I would want it and dump in those variable names where they should go. This is important because on homework 4, you're forced to use F strings. So it's good practice to use those now. It's actually a whole lot easier too, because you're not having to remember to concatenate this with that and this and that. It's just real simple.
I guess on your output, when it says, Fiesta call and then 1996 call. You want to clean that up or how do you?
Where did you, on which one?
That one. If it was-
No, because that first part is supposed to print out all in alphabetical order. And then the next one is supposed to print them out in this particular order.
So you wanna keep it that way.
Yeah, no spaces in between. Don't add extra print statements, stuff like that. So now if I run this, you'll see that I get the same exact result as what we had there. This is just using F strings. Now, what's the problem with our output?
Here.
You get which one?
I have open.
That's what we're supposed to do.
No, but she has literally,
Oh,
Are those
oh,
brackets?
because those are brackets, not parentheses. Does that make sense? These here are curly brackets. Just like what you would use for a dictionary. Sorry, you guys probably can't see that. I can blow this back up. What are you talking about? They're right there. There you go. Curly braces.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
All right. So remember, here was our output. Well, what's the problem with our output? It's not sorted by year yet, right? So we at least have the structure, but before we can print this out, we have to figure out how we're going to sort this by year. Now, what's the problem with sorting it by year? Well, first, let's go back and look at what this returns, just so we have some idea of how this looks, right? We already know the keys are the what? And the values are the years. But when we tried to do a sort up here, we had to do a sort on the keys, right? In this one, we had to do a sort on keys. If we want to look something up, do we, in a dictionary, do we pass it the value or do we pass it a key?
The key.
The key, right? So our whole problem with being able to sort this is we can get a list of all the years and sort that. That's not a problem. But we can't then go back and look up in that dictionary what year equals what name, right? There's no way to do that. Not in the beginner Python that you guys know. And I swear if I see 4 lambda x and x in there, you guys, yeah, right? So if I see 4 lambda x and x, you guys did not learn that in this class. Don't use it. Please don't use it. At this point, just turn in your homework assignment and you will be far better off, okay? But if we think about it a little bit, we can only look up things by what? Okay. And we want to sort the years, so they would have to be keys. All right, right? Just a little bit of thinking through. So what would we do here? If this returns us back, this car years, returns us back a dictionary where the names are the keys and the years are the values. We need that. Gage got it. We need to flip it, right? We just flip it. So how would we go about creating a new dictionary with those flipped? Well, break that part down. We want to create a new dictionary with those two those two things flipped. So what's the first part of that? Create an empty dictionary. So new dict equals curly braces, right? Now, what do we need to go through? Well, what we already did here, right? We already have it. For name, comma, year. In this, we're going to move this down because we'll use that here in a little bit. How would we flip these two values around for new dictionary?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Square brackets year.
Okay. Actually, not, yeah, just year. Yep. Is what? It's maybe the first year you guys get the whole homework assignment. You're very, very close here. Where are you getting car from? Name. Aaron says name. Makes sense, right? We already have the value of name. We just say new dict year name. Right? You already pulled that out right here. Okay. So what did this actually do? It now created a new dictionary in which they are flipped. Let's make sure that is correct. For now, I'm just going to comment out this print statement. So let's run this. And we now have a dictionary in which the years are the keys and the values are the names of the cars. Everybody see how that works? So now what are we supposed to do? Yeah, but if we did a new dict.sort, what would happen? Wouldn't do anything because new dict is it's a dictionary, not a list, right? So how would we go about getting all the keys out of this and putting that into a list that we can sort?
Like, you know, there's like a command that like allows us to turn the keys to a list. It's like new dict equals list and then just like parentheses. I forgot it is. It exists. I know it. You used it earlier.
Aha! That's the key part I was looking for somebody to come up with. We already did this, right? It's this. We created a new list. We took the keys out and then we sorted it. And then we got a list of all the cars. You guys already did that work. So we just need to do the same thing down here. We could say, well, we need to create an empty list, right? So we would just create a new list of car years equals empty list. Now, or better yet, let's do it with the one-liners. Anybody remember how to do the one-liner? List. And so how do we get the keys from our new dict out? New dict.keys. Just like that, right? That gets us back a list of all the car years. Now we need to what? Car years.sort. That gives us back a list of all the car years in the correct order. But now what do we do? You're not far off. We're going to do a for loop. But what are we going to do with this for loop? Well, we need to loop through that list to start, right? So how do we loop through a list? Just for year in what? Car years. What are we supposed to be doing right now?
We do the print
Print.
and then we do the next string.
Let's do it as an F string, much easier. Okay. So now we're going to do curly braces for places we need the variables. So what do we want this to look like? It's very similar to what we did down here, right? So let's just copy this one up. So we already did that. So we put in our year. The problem is this name, right? We don't have a name. So how do we get the name? We have the year. Yeah, not really search, but yes, your idea is right. So what dictionary do we need to go look up with that year in? new dict. And how do we get the specific key back? Or we're going to be looking up to get a value, but what's our key? Year. Everybody see how we got that? Why we got that? And so now if we run this, did we get what we were hoping for? We got our years first, we got our name second, and those years are now sorted. We got the years, but they were not sorted. That was our problem.
Oh,
Yeah, the whole issue with this whole problem is that we wanted things sorted by the year, and that messes everything up because the years were values out of what was up above. All right, first year, you guys actually get the full homework 3. I would rather do that than you guys cheat on that last part. But does everybody understand how we're manipulating dictionaries and lists? Because that is the whole point of this assignment. The whole point of this assignment is to understand how dictionaries work and how lists work. If we want to look up something in a list, we need to know the what? Index. Very good. In a dictionary, we need to know the what? The keys. That will return us back whatever value was associated with it. Once you get that concept of when to use what. So if I wanted to group a bunch of students together, would I use a list or a dictionary? A list, right? And the reason why would we use a list?
It's just like names.
Right, it's like just names of a student, right? And we can do it in an order, right? We know that it's an order. Lists are ordered and dictionaries are not. So if we know that something's going to be ordered like names, we can always do a dot sort on it and get it. Let's see. Keisha said, why put year after new dict on the last line? So the reason we did this is we're reusing this year to go look up that key in new dict, and this will return back the value of whatever that was in that dictionary. Does that make sense, Keisha? I hope I'm saying that right. Keisha? There's no E there, it's an A, Jason. Not really. Okay, so this first part here is the year, right? And to get the name of the car, we don't have a name at this point. That's our problem, is we don't have name defined. We do inside of this for loop, but we don't out here where we can print it. Like if I just tried to put name here, it's going to fail because we have no name to put in. And actually the name that we have defined is what? Actually back up from up here somewhere is where it's getting Fiesta. That's why it just says Fiesta, Fiesta, Fiesta all the way down, right? So what we want to do is get back that name. And to do that, we use that year to look it up in the new dictionary. So we have the new dictionary and we're going to use the year as our quote index in order to go find out what value is set for year, which in this case is the name. There again, if you want to think of it in another way, you could look something like name equals new dict year. That will get us back a value of name. And now I could put name here as opposed to doing that out. The only difference between these two is that it just makes a little more sense. If you do it this way, it's easier to read. That's all it is. And there's nothing wrong with doing this. We're not about code optimization at this point. We're just learning Python. All right. So if it takes you a couple extra lines, no big deal. No problem. Thanks for asking that, because trust me, you're not the only one. Not the only one. I will very much welcome those questions. All right. When would I use a dictionary? What's a good example?
Pretty much if you want to have a database of like, say like you don't want to have a database of all the students, but you want to know like, say like, okay, student name, this, I color that, or color that, height that.
Yep, when you have a lot of details like that and you want to be able to call them by the detail thing. Does that make sense? Like I could list those all out in an actual list if I wanted to. But because I want to be able to just say hair, because it's easier to look up hair than remember that that's the third index of this list. Just call it hair. It's much easier, right? Or in this case, our cars. It's much easier for us to get the data information about these cars as production of current model or generation or vehicle information. That is the reason we put these in dictionaries. Just real quick, I'm gonna scroll through this list of names. Wendy, is that you at the very bottom?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Does that make more sense? That I know that was one question you were asking between lists and dictionaries. Does that make more sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. All right, now this homework isn't finished, right? What are you guys missing?
For the rest of the cars.
All the rest of the cars. Do we have to change any of the code at the bottom? No.
Just take it.
Right, we just need to kill our pretty print because we don't need that anymore. Good catch. And we only have our prints down at this bottom where it asked for prints.
You need to update cars to be car one.
That's correct too. So as you guys add out these other cars, right, car 3, etc., you need to make sure you add them to this list. All right. It is. It's a little bit to type in there, but use your copy paste because if you use copy and paste, it's really not that much to get in there. Oh yeah, when you get it all out, yeah, it ends up being a really long list. Let's see here. What about detailing comments to explain the code? That's a great idea. So let's go through here and let's add some comments to our code so we know what we were doing. All right. So this first part, we already kind of know what is in this, but it would be good to comment why we're creating a list, right? So let's say this is our list of car dictionaries. Okay. We have that. We have that. All right. What were we doing here in car year? Does anybody remember here? We have new dict equals empty braces. What is that? Creating an empty dictionary. So create an empty dictionary. I know we're a little over on time, so if you need to drop out online, you're welcome to. I'm just going through this last little piece. All right, what did we do here? Yep, so loop through the car dict and set the, what we said is the keys. Name, right? So set the name as keys and the value or the, what do we set as values? Years, year as values. And in this case, we want to specifically set the year introduced. Hide this behind the chat here. There we go. Okay. And then at the very bottom here, what do we do? Just returned new dictionary. Okay. This one's pretty self-explanatory, but it might be nice to make this one down here at the very end. So once again, create a new dictionary. All right, what do we do with this for loop? Anybody remember why we did this part here? Yep, to flip them. So go through the results of car year to reverse keys and values, meaning that we wanted years as keys and names as values. Then down here, we wanted to sort alphabetically. the keys for years. And this last one was loop through years to print out in correct format. Okay. Now, none of those comments are required, but when we get to the midterm, comments are required. So just good habit to do it now. All right, anybody got any questions on this homework assignment? Yep. Practice going back through this one and understanding how we took in this data and did this with it. Because when it comes to your midterm projects, depending on what you pick to do as a project, you're probably going to have to do some of this and you'll have to write your own code in order to do that. All right. I'm going to pause the recording or stop it